episode of Moments Off the Mat. I have Andy Barth, the CEO and founder of Mercury Wrestling Club, as well as Jonny Rggiano, who is the Director of Ops at Mercury Wrestling Club. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Taylor.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'll just start off with, how are you all doing during this crazy time?
Well, I think we're just hanging in there. It is a crazy time. We've been trying to chat with a lot of the athletes, a lot of the coaches we're involved with. We're comparing our experiences of how to what extent we're shut down. We're continuing to support all our coaches and athletes, and I think everyone is appreciative of that and recognizes that. It's it's tough because wrestlers are active people who like to work out, like to be busy, and and here we are. We're all kind of shut down in our various little towns or big cities, all together. So we're looking forward to when we can get back out there. I know Jonny's found a new way to kind of keep himself busy. Jonny, do you want to talk about that right now? Jump in on that one.
So my wife and I have been blessed and excited about welcoming our first child into the world, and so this last couple of days have been just so whirlwind of excitement. We've got our little daughter here at home now, and we're just having a blast with her. So it's really wonderful.
Yeah. I say that, and some of the comments, but we're also, all of us hearing about Jonny's little girl reminds me how much we all think about the future and how important the things are. I mean, we're all trying to be good citizens as well. We're all trying to abide by by what's happening in California. We're operating, our youth programs are shut down until the schools can open again. We're not trying to find a way around that. We're trying to make sure that we do everything we can to help this societal issue.
And to kind of piggyback off of that too, I think some of the meetings that we've had, like with our youth coaches, is in some of our athletes and whatnot, people are being very, very creative at this time in how we communicate, how we interact, how people are getting their workouts in. So we have coaches who are, setting up lesson plans and doing Zoom meetings just like we're doing right now. And so that's been, it's nice to see that the wrestling spirit lives on in any type of challenge that we face. Yeah, we're trying to make sure that we do get out there, on our through our various digital media avenues with ways that folks can work out. Our coaches are putting that up. I think you probably have heard, Taylor, I think you probably talked to some of the other Beat the Streets folks. Beat the Streets has this million minutes effort going on to try to keep the young people who have been engaged with Beat the Streets and the various programs around the country active, trying to make it a little bit competitive spirit. We know that it's easy to get wrestlers to compete at something. So, trying to get them working out, counting their minutes, posting their minutes. I think while it's on the Beat the Street side of things, it's always been the most impact we can have is when our coaches have been able to interact with young people. I think we can continue at least to have a positive impact and constructively affect these young people's lives. Even when we can't interact face to face or person to person, we can still interact face to face, keep them active, keep them thinking, help them to understand the benefits of physical activity and maintaining that in their lives.
And I think it's cool also with that million minutes challenge is that there's the challenge to just kind of better yourself every day, whether that's reading a book or watching a motivational speech or reviewing film or something like that, just to get yourself better, not necessarily just in the physical sense, but mentally and just in all aspects of their lives, which I think is a really cool part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of want to kick this off with talking about the Dave Schultz Memorial International. It's been held in Colorado Springs the last several years. We didn't have one this past year, but there's been talks before about making it a ranking tournament. And now you guys in LA, you kind of want to bring it out there and turn it into a ranking tournament, especially leading into the 2028 Olympics. So can you just talk about that effort a little bit and kind of how you guys have gone through that decision-making process and what steps there are that still need to be taken?
Yes. So I need to take just a little step back and let you know how it all sort of originated. So the USA Wrestling, Rich Bender, Bruce Baumgartner, Cody Bickley, Pete Isaias, they really kind of asked us to try to set up, an ad hoc organizing and advisory committee for the Olympic effort. We'll be ad hoc until, probably for a number of years, because the only official committee is eventually appointed, by LA 28, the organizing committee, and that probably won't happen until 2027. But they asked us to try to see what can we do. They gave us a very broad mandate, and they asked us to try to see what we could do from the perspective of sort of building or establishing or creating, a legacy for wrestling using the 2028 Olympics as a foundational for that. And so we came up, there are 7 pillars that we had set out, trying to see what we could achieve in each of these areas. And so we were looking to, build youth wrestling, build high school wrestling, expand college wrestling, try to see if we can expand the number of college programs here in Southern California, build the market, build the audience, create more revenue enhancing opportunities, and also to use the Olympics to make sure that we also built and established and strengthened our international relationships as well. And then bringing us to the final one, as it relates to the Schultzes, how can we also try to bring, some international top level events into the Southern California area to try to build excitement, build awareness, build enthusiasm, and help create a positive symbiotic relationship with all these other things that we're trying to do. And so, we've been examining the possibility with a couple of other groups here in the Southern California area for, can we bring some of the, some of the age level competitions here to California at some point, Southern California U23s or Cadet Worlds. And then Rich and Pete also suggested that, what we'd really love to do also is to bring a ranking tournament to the United States. The ideal tournament for that is to bring the Dave Schultz, is to turn the Dave Schultz into a ranking tournament for UWW. And then the natural idea came, hey, would you guys like to see, can you possibly work to bring the Dave Schultz to Southern California? And we thought, that's a natural connection. Dave Schultz and Mark Schultz both spent time at UCLA. The 2028 Wrestling Olympics, the wrestling events in the 2028 Olympics are going to be held at Pauley Pavilion, which is the arena on the campus at UCLA. UCLA is going to be the athlete village, the Olympic village for the athletes in the 2028 Olympics. So all of these things had a lot of connections. And so we've now started, we're starting to discuss things, with UCLA, with the possibility of bringing the Schultz here to Southern California in, I think the most realistic time period would be sort of 2022.
But if it works, we'd love to keep holding it here for several years after. We think that'd be an excellent way at the senior level to bring focus to international wrestling, men's freestyle, women's freestyle, men's Greco-Roman, to the Southern California area, create excitement, and really build momentum as we go into the 2028 Olympics.
I did not get a chance to go to the World Cup when they were held in LA. So what was the fan experience like? What was the response from the Southern California area?
So and this would be a good time for me also to turn it over to Jonny, because Jonny was involved with that. I think, that we just put on a really a top-notch event. And I think that the fan experience was excellent. I think the viewing opportunity, the informative nature, I think it was a really outstanding presentation of wrestling. And I think that has really, I think it's carried through. And I think we've seen many of the positives flow through into a lot of the other competitive events since then. We generally would draw probably about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, a lot of Southern Californians, but who are interested in wrestling. But we got a good turnout, from the Iranian community. There's a good Iranian community in Southern California. They're very enthusiastic, very knowledgeable fans. They did come out. And so it was a real, some of the Iranian wrestlers said sometimes they almost felt like they were at home. So, because there was such a loud, boisterous crowd of Iranians in the stands. Jonny, this is also how Jonny and I met, and how Jonny started to get involved. So why don't you dovetail a little bit on that, and talk about the World Cup, and talk about those events, talk about your path here.
Absolutely. So yeah, the World Cup was really, really special here in Los Angeles. It's like Andy said, it's really how I started working with Titan Mercury. I'd been a chairman in 1999 in the Spokane World Cup. That was, we won it in Spokane. I think it might've been one of Zeke Jones's first years as a head coach. And I had a little bit of a basis of knowledge of how it worked. My exclusive job in 99 was to go in and run the Fan Fest. And so we had our Fan Fest set up, and we had kind of a whole entire schedule of events and prizes, giveaways, little different activities for people, for families and everybody. And when we got to Los Angeles, I think the experience and the stakes were a lot higher and a lot more exciting, because we were in the historic LA Forum, and you couldn't ask for a better venue for wrestling. And to top it off, like Andy said, we have a very strong Iranian community here in Los Angeles that absolutely adores wrestling, just like we do. So it brought a really wonderful type of dynamic in regards to the competition, to see the Iranian community come forward, see a lot of the local wrestling communities get involved. And it was kind of a building up process. It seemed like every single year it got more exciting. We had more viewership. We had a little bit more of a dialed in process where, fans got an awesome show. The last year I was the director of operations for it. So I really started off with helping Pete Isaiah's staff from a grassroots level the first year in LA, and then eventually going into the director of operations spot for that event, and working with our executive director, working with Andy and Rich and Bruce. Well, it was actually Jim at the time, and then a lot with Pete and Ryan. And I think one of the neat things that we did the last year is we had a World Cup week. So during that week, we had Beat the Streets LA had their annual benefit and we actually did it at the LA 84 Foundation, which is a wonderful space downtown LA. We had a proclamation in City Hall for Wrestling Week, which I thought it was absolutely wonderful. But I'm sure Andy could speak a lot more about it because he was kind of spearheading that too. And then we had some other events. We had a gala for USWF, and we also had an art show that myself, Justin Hawk, Joey Krebs participated in, and that I produced in LA, in the Arts District of LA, called the Wrestler's Aesthetic. We ended up doing the Wrestler's Aesthetic in Paris in 2017 as well. And then a couple other little events like, we had some clinics and whatnot. So we tried to give as much opportunity throughout the week for people to be involved in wrestling in a variety of different ways. And it seemed to have worked out really well. And I think those were good things for people to experience, and things that we can build off of as we move into 2028, coming back to LA. And, obviously the Schultz, as long as we have the opportunity to have it here, I think the Schultz is going to be a really good opportunity for us to go in and expose more people to wrestling and give our fans something to be involved in.
Yeah. So I want to move over a little bit into Titan Mercury Wrestling Club. Obviously, it's one of the more prestigious ones happening right now. So many world medalists on your team, guys winning U.S. Open titles left and right. Andy, can you just talk about how Titan Mercury Wrestling Club came about, what kind of need that you saw that needed to be filled there?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to keep it short, and if you want to ask, I'll fill it in, because it really I can't really say that it was I had some grand scheme or some grand plan. I really was originally most interested in starting off, trying to establish a stronger, youth development programs for young men and women, boys and girls in Southern California. And then my good friend Jim Ravenak, he told me that he was going to be winding a Gator down, and a Gator Wrestling Club down. And I thought, well, I think I got a little bit more capacity, a little bit of capability to start to pick up some of these senior level athletes. And it really grew from there. That we picked up after the London Olympics. We started picking up some of those athletes, like Elena Perishkova on the women's side. Let's see who else was early on. Shauna Isbell. And on the men's side, started picking up Win Mahalik and Keith Gavin, and those are a few of our very initial guys and women, and it just started to grow from there. That we realized that there was a real need to be connected. That while the RTCs were doing a good job of starting to fill the gap of keeping athletes involved and engaged. And at that time, 2012, there was I think there was a lot of concern that the athletes didn't really have the ability to make a living, to kind of support themselves, to really avoid the temptation of looking at that going into MMA as the only means to be an active competitor and to still have a be able to support yourself financially. And I think between the combination of the RTCs, the existing very supportive clubs like New York Athletic Club and Sunkist, and then I think Titan Mercury coming in, I think we've really created a a very strong kind of network of supporters for wrestlers, for men and women who can help them provide for their training needs, help them provide for their travel and their competing needs, and help them with put them in touch with, connect them with more coaches, more opportunities, more international opportunities. Because I think what we needed, that we needed to keep that. We always had, as a country, we always had a great deal of depth, but we've lost a lot of athletes after college, after a couple years of college. And I think what we've done over the last 5-6 years is keep those athletes involved, engaged. And I think by having the depth at both the men's and the women's level, I think we've made we've enhanced our competitiveness. Also, we've been able to get the athletes, the more elite, the more competitive athletes into more international tournaments. So the first time they're meeting and seeing international competition, is not at the World Championships or not at the Olympics. They've seen all their competition, multiple times already, and so I think that familiarity, that that competitive experience, I think brings them up a level and makes them all more competitive and ready to compete at that international level in a way that they hadn't been before. So I think it started really just wanting to have a stronger youth development capability, but it developed into really I think a really helpful, strong international support mechanism.
Yeah,
Jonny, what else would you like? I was just going to let John. John, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things, and I came in right about a year, a year after, started kind of working in with Titan Mercury, and I've been in the role of director of ops for about a year and a half now, and so I switched roles from a media job to director of ops. And one of the things that I'm just always so excited and proud to be a part of in regards to Titan Mercury is the amount of care that Andy has put forth, to give to our athletes the opportunity to be honed in on what's most important. I think that's what Titan Mercury does really well, is cuts out a lot of the challenges that athletes might have to face if they didn't have support from a senior level club like Titan Mercury. Debbie, our travel agent, takes a lot of the stress and takes away a lot of the pressure that our athletes or our coaches might have in regards to trying to get from one event to the other. There's a lot of service that we have from our staff to try to just ease those things, and just watching that those personal relationships grow as athletes go in and they start off their career. They've got unbelievable talent, but like Andy was talking about with the international competition, they just move level of confidence and capability to actually being able to achieve their goals, of winning those world and Olympic medals and titles. I think there's a lot of those small little things that, a senior level, national level club like Titan Mercury does to help, do our small part in that to help those athletes, achieve that. So it's really, really wonderful to watch how much it's grown, even in the short period of time of, 8 years of watching how much depth wrestling has retained, and watching how much growth we've seen over that period of time. It goes without saying. We're super excited about see what's going to happen once we get back to competition and once our athletes get to compete to, make the Olympic team and then represent the United States in Tokyo.
Yeah, so it obviously the presence of these national clubs in the U.S. definitely helping with American development. With you guys giving them the opportunities to go, like you were saying, internationally and getting their hands on some of the best wrestlers in the world and helping them become the best. So I think it's awesome. It's really cool. Yeah.
That's what we want to see. We just want to see, the representatives of the United States get to the top, get onto the podium, get onto the world and the Olympic podium, and bring achieve their dreams and bring those medals home to the United States, and hopefully have a very positive experience about it throughout. And we started talking a little bit more at the U.S. Open this year. I started talking with our men and our women about the difference between goals and success. And I got this. I'd had a very insightful conversation with before with a lady who had been the UCLA gymnastics coach, who's a brilliant motivational speaker, and she gave me the ideas to talk about that. We think about our goals and we think about success. Our goals, obviously, going in to the U.S. Open, our goals are, we want, you want to win. We want to be the team champion. We want to see as many of you, place as possible. But those goals are just a step along the path to success. Success means that, at the end of the process, you can look back and you can say that, I did everything I could. I have no regrets, and I have achieved all that, and I've advanced, in my personal development and my physical, my mental development, that I know I have no regrets, because at the end of it, there's nothing else that I would have done differently. But I've achieved as much as I can, and recognize that I've done that, and don't have any regrets about what what I did in my training. And we're trying to also, getting back to what we started with, we're trying to communicate to our athletes that this is a time to reflect on what you can do. And I think we had we were talking about, this is a time, I think we'd send out a message that, this is a time to review and reflect on your weaknesses and try to correct. This is a time you can take to try to correct your weaknesses. If it's, a techniques weakness, or a flexibility weakness, or a conditioning weakness, or whatever it is, or whether you've been injured and that's been your problem. Hopefully you now have the time to heal, but take this time, and hopefully our athletes will not look back at this period of time and say, gee, I wish I would have done such and such while I had this 1 or 2 or whatever. Hopefully it's not more than a couple months off, but even if it is, hopefully they won't look back and feel like, oh, I wasted this opportunity. I should have taken advantage of it in a different way.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you guys do regularly communicate with your athletes and coaches, because you guys are spread out all over the map?
Right.
Can you take a second? And Jonny, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I Jonny and I will talk about a communication strategy. We'll talk about how do we communicate with our head men's coach, Royce Alger, and our head women's coach, Marcy Van Duzen Lane. And then, we'll follow up and talk about, okay, how should you be talking with the athletes? How often? Who you should be talking? What do we need you to cover? And then Jonny will do a lot of that follow up from there. So now I'll turn it over to Jonny.
Well, I don't know if there's really much more that that Andy didn't really kind of address on that. you know, the club is quite vast now. And so I think the big thing is that our relationships have grown so much more with individual wrestlers and our coaches who are working with multiple wrestlers. So to Andy's point, when we go in and we set up a strategy on things that, you know, we've identified of areas of need or areas where we can support, we go in and we reach out accordingly. And, you know, I think one of the things that I've noticed over the years is just there's a great amount of gratitude that system's yielded. So we try to be prudent in the decisions and the ways that we can go in and help and work with everybody. But it always seems to be very goal oriented and support oriented, and that's really the nice thing about it is we're always looking to allow everyone to do the best in their capacity of what they can do and work collectively to go in and achieve the same goal.
Yeah, but I'm glad, Taylor, you asked about it, because it's something actually I'd say, John, probably in the last six to 8 months, we've actually increased our commitment and doubled down on our efforts. We try to also have regular conversations with the head coaching staff at USA Wrestling for the men and for the women. We want to make sure that you know, we're all on the same page, that we're you know, that you know, what we think is important and what you know, Bill's addict thinks is important, that you know, we're seeing eye to eye on that, and that we're reinforcing those messages to our athletes. We want to make sure that you know, what Terry Steiner and Marcy are you know, in sync on what's important for our women. So we spent a lot more time, and big hats off to everyone, you know, at USA Wrestling, because they've been very open to it, and I think that it's been greeted very positively in the last, you know, 6 or 8 months, and it's something we want to continue. And so, you know, we also you know, Jonny, who's worked very hard. We also try to talk on a regular basis with our you know, the RTC coaches, where a lot of our athletes are training, to make sure that, again, we know what we know what they're thinking, and we're supporting, and we're focused on reinforcing the same critical. And also, if they see that you know, one of our athletes has a particular need, you know, that they can bring that up and discuss that with us.
I want to move backward a little bit to something that you mentioned earlier, saying that, you know, Titan Mercury's goal is to be team champions when it comes to the US Open. But you guys have also given your athletes an opportunity to wrestle at the World Clubs Cup. So how did those decisions get to be made? Is it one club per country? What goes into being able to field a team for that event?
Yeah, so that's an interesting event. You know, it has had a lot of support from the Iran Wrestling Federation, and I think it came up at a time that we were really trying to help promote and build you know, build friendships and diplomacy through sport. And we competed 4 times in that event. It's a you know, I think it's not an inexpensive thing to do, and so I think that and you can have more than one club per country go. We chose to go those 4 years. The last year or two, there's been a little, I don't think it's a surprise, and I don't think that they would, I don't want to be offended if I characterize it this way. There's been a little bit of turmoil in the Iran Wrestling Federation. And so I think we will go again. I don't know if it's going to be this year. I had been hoping it was this year, but we'll have to see, you know, based on this
this situation. But I think it brings together, it really gives the athletes an opportunity to get 4 or 5, really high quality level of international matches. It's a setting that, it feels, it feels a little bit like it has a little bit of a World Cup feel to it. So I think it creates that, that excitement. I've really enjoyed going, and I look forward to going again. They do allow a couple of exceptions in that you are allowed to bring in a couple of wrestlers from another country than your club. We've only taken advantage of that in one or two spots. Some other clubs and around the world have utilized that more fully. But it's a very competitive event. I think that the athletes who have gone have benefited enormously, and I'd like to see us do it again. I just don't know exactly when that will be. One of the fellows who's helped us a lot with that is Mo Tavakolian. He's been an excellent liaison for us in the past, and he now serves on our board at Titan Mercury, so he'll continue. I know he wants to see us continue to do that. We'd like to do that. You just have to wait for the circumstances to be right again.
I just have a couple more for you guys before we wrap up. Andy, I thought it would be really important to touch on Beat the Streets LA in this call and its mission. I know you guys recently postponed your benefit, which is supposed to be in May, I believe, mid-May. Can you just talk about, first of all, the mission of Beat the Streets and why at those benefits you guys decide to put women's wrestling in the front and center for that event?
Sure. Well, let me take the second question first. It's almost 30% of the young people who participate in our Beat the Streets programs in Los Angeles are young women. I think, there's no other event like that where that highlights women, women's wrestling to the extent that we do with our event. I think that I know all the statistics. Women's wrestling, or in high school they probably call it girls wrestling, but girls wrestling, women's wrestling is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. I think that's an incredibly exciting development. I love to see the the stories, the anecdotes that we get from our parents, our Beat the Streets parents. It's a life-changing event for some of these fathers to see how their young women, their daughters, develop through the Beat the Streets program, through wrestling, and just how much confidence they gain, how much discipline they pick up, how successful they become in other aspects of their lives through wrestling. So, with about almost 30% of the participants being young women in our Beat the Streets program, we want to emphasize the importance of that, and there's no reason, right, why it shouldn't be 50%. Why can't we have 50% female participation in Beat the Streets? I think we'd hope for that. Also, it's really, I think it's really exciting to see we've had these top level competitors. We had U.S. versus Japan. We had U.S. versus India. We were scheduled to do U.S. versus Canada at the Olympic weights, and then we were going to try to fill in at the non-Olympic weights with other Latin American
world-class competitors to really make it a you know, like a Pan American or almost well, North America versus South America, North America versus itself type of event. Really create a, you know, sort of a geographic buzz to it. You know, this COVID-19 has caused us to postpone and reschedule. Right now, we'd be looking. I guess it's funny. The 2020 is going to almost be like the year that never was, because everything that was scheduled in 2020 is going to get moved to 2021. We hope to move this event to 2021. You know, we'd like to talk. Actually, we'd like to get on the phone with you know, with Rich and Terry and see. You know, just what their thinking is on timing. You know, May of 2021 should work for us. But you know, I don't know if they have any other thoughts, because you know, it might be that we want to even get some competitions and some excitement in there sooner. But Beat the Streets Los Angeles. You know, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to, you know, the name says it all. We're really trying to get in there and help these young people, have a better chance in life, learn the life lessons that wrestling will teach them, you know, avoid the downfalls and the pitfalls that that can come their way if they have, you know, large blocks of time where they're not doing something productive. We're in about we have about 25 programs. You know, our staff there, led by Yaru Washington, they're doing a tremendous job. We have both school-based and community-based programs. We work with a lot of constituencies, whether it's the LA Unified School District or LA Schools Police Department or the LA Police, or Boys and Girls Clubs in certain areas. I apologize to those constituencies I'm not mentioning, but that's just a small summary of the different groups we work with throughout the LA area to bring these programs. You know, we're trying to do three things. We want to increase the impact that we have by impacting the lives of more, you know, more students, more young people overall. We want to impact them in more ways, whether it's giving them some sort of, you know, academic support or life learning support, and impact them throughout more of the calendar year, whether we can help them in the, you know, through summer programs or summer camps as well.
I think it's really awesome that you guys aren't just focusing on the wrestling. It's just focusing on becoming a better person and taking the skills that wrestling gives you and applying them to real life. And so you guys are doing amazing work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. This is the last one that I'll wrap up with. Just assuming that people watching this don't know everything about you guys. So I'd love to hear what your connections with, your connections are to wrestling and kind of how you got into the sport itself. So Jonny, we can start with you if you want to kick this off.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a pretty big wrestling community in Spokane, Washington. You know, growing up as a kid, we had USA versus Russia competing in dual meets just in my backyard at Whitworth College, where I ended up getting my master's degree. And then a couple of years later, we had, you know, the Olympic trials in '96, and then we ended up having the World Cup, and so we had, you know, a lot of senior level, Olympic level competition, and we also had, you know, a huge wrestling community. I wrestled in high school for Cash Stone, who's one of the first coaches who started wrestling in Spokane. He's the referee in Vision Quest, Spokane's, you know, home of Vision Quest. So it was kind of a unique situation. I grew up in a state that didn't have a D1 wrestling program. And so, my passion for wrestling, it was just immersed in the culture, and there was opportunities to be a part of it. And so when my career ended early, I was fortunate enough to, get connected with USA Wrestling. And then we had, so I could do events. And then on the developmental side, I could coach locally. So I was coaching, and went on to the profession in teaching and continued to coach. And then that led me into working with Titan Mercury. And so obviously, my focus in wrestling has always been trying to just be active and be a part and help out in any way we can in this wonderful community. I think that's the biggest thing that I love about wrestling is that the community is so strong, and we all have a very, very strong desire to watch kids get the value out of the sport, like Andy and Yaru and Beat the Streets do in our communities here in LA. Because wrestling is such a wonderful sport in regards to the enrichment and the development of us as human beings, all the way to, the Olympic level of going in and helping out competing, or helping out support those who are competing to achieve the highest goals. So how I got into it was I grew up in a community that was extremely passionate about it, and I was obsessed with it. And I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to have some opportunities to go in and to help out the community that's given me so much.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Andy?
So I got exposed to wrestling. I was we had just moved, and my family had just moved from. We lived in Queens in New York. We had just moved into Manhattan, and my dad my mom and dad had me start going to this program at the New York Athletic Club called the Saturday morning program. And that was an opportunity for the children and members to be exposed to a variety of different sports: fencing, judo, water polo, and wrestling, some others as well. But it just, I started it and going, and then I kept going back to the wrestling sessions every weekend. And then one, the coach there was a fellow by the name of John Bruce, who he said, "Hey, I think I know where do you go to high school?" I asked, "Stuyvesant High School." I said, "I think I know your coach there." Well, it turned out he knew the former coach there. But anyway, he had me start going down to the workouts in high school, and then, one thing led to another. So I wrestled all through high school, and I wrestled through. Then I went to college at Columbia. I wrestled all through Columbia, and then I wrestled while I was going to grad school, getting my MBA at Columbia. I got the chance. I wrestled for the New York Athletic Club on their. I wrestled on their Greco-Roman and their freestyle teams as well, and so I wrestled competitively for 10 years. And then, once you have that experience, I think once you've been a wrestler, wrestling stays with you your whole life. Hopefully you pick up the critical life lessons about, discipline and hard work and humility. That even if you won today, so there's someone out there that's probably going to beat you tomorrow, but that there's always another chance. There's always another chance to do better the next day. So that's what we try to just keep doing better the next day.
Very cool. I just want to thank you guys for joining us. So we took a little more of your time than we originally planned, but thank you guys for staying on and sharing what Titan Mercury's about, what Beat the Streets LA is about, and all that good stuff.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks, Taylor.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.